to use the microphone. And I also represent Dalhousie as a SSHRC leader. Alice Aiken, the AVPRI, asked me to introduce our guest today and welcome everybody. It's great to see such a good turnout for this event. So today we're very lucky to have Tim Wilson with us. He's the Executive Director of Research Grants and Partnerships at the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. And he's basically responsible for overseeing all the granting programs. So if you need some money, ask him. No. He also, prior to coming to SSHRC, worked in Treasury Board, as well as the Public Service Commission, and he also teaches English at University of Ottawa. So please give a warm welcome to Tim Wilson.
Thanks.
And I should also note that when we get to the question and answer period, I'll pass the mic around because we have people watching through a live stream, and those who are in live stream can send questions to the interweb.
Okay, thanks a lot, Howard. As Howard mentioned, as Howard mentioned, I'm responsible for the agency's granting program, so Insight Grants, Insight Development Grants. I've been here about 4 years. This is an exciting part of the job for me because it's important for me to make sure that the granting programs are responding to you, the clients, and stakeholders. So there's going to be some information. I'm hoping to leave lots of room for questions and comments that I try to take back, and we've been trying over the last few years to make changes to the programs in response to what we've heard, and we want to continue to do that. There we go. Okay, so we'll go with this mic. Can everyone hear me? And all right. So what I'll talk about today, and so I'll talk a bit quickly about some exciting developments overall in the context of federal support for research. So our context and priorities. But then I'll get down to, at a high level, some changes to the programs, an update on where those have been going in terms of trends on overall support and success rate, as well as what we call collaborative initiatives. So a few special calls that maybe people don't know about, where we're working with other organizations to co-fund research in particular areas, and it's kind of a win-win for us and the partner and the community. So the most exciting development from my point of view in the context of federal support for research recently was the Budget 2018 announcements with respect to increases, first of all, in $215 million for SSHRC's core programs. So that's the grant programs that I'll be talking about later. So that is going to go a long way to bolstering our ongoing level of awards. To put that number in context, 2 years ago, we received a $16 million annual increase to those programs, and we were over the moon because normally before that we were happy with a $7 million annual increase. This will top out at $54 million ongoing per year, so it's an order of magnitude higher than our normal increases in funding. In addition, the budget announced the creation of a tri-council fund. So again, the context for this, for those of you who may not know, the Federal Review of Fundamental Science, the quote-unquote Naylor report, had highlighted pardon me, a few areas where the granting councils, ourselves, NSERC, CIHR, could work together, and one was support for high-risk interdisciplinary research that cut across those boundaries. This Tri-Council Fund's designed to fill that gap. And I know that our presidents, Ted and Mario, were here. They're going across the country listening to stakeholders in terms of how to set that fund up. There's also significant increases to our Tri-Council programs, Research Support Fund, the chairs program, as well as a targeted announcement around support for Indigenous research capacity that I'll mention again in a second. So last October, again in response to that fundamental science review, the minister announced the creation of this Canada Research Coordinating Committee that has the presidents of the councils, the minister sits on it, the chief science advisor, Mona Namer, and NRC president. So it has all of the key players, CFI, I neglected to mention, has all the key players when it comes to the federal support for research. And its task will be to deliver on those 5 priorities. And the money to deliver on those priorities we just discussed in the budget. Okay, so so there's a delay on this thing, sorry. So so one of the ideas that they're engaging on, as I mentioned, was this Tri-Council Fund. And so a few of the ideas, these are initial ideas that have been put out there for discussion on this Tri-Council Fund that are on the slide. So the idea would be to have this, what's being nominally called now a Frontiers in Research Fund, that with a couple of streams, one for, let's say, what they're calling proof of concept, a smaller scale, testing out of a risky idea, and one for building to scale up to $20 million over 7 years, a larger, almost NCE level, but hopefully avoiding some of the limitations of the current or avoiding duplication with the existing NCE program, as well as special calls where they're to respond rapidly to societal challenges. So the other priority is this is to bolster the equity, diversity, and inclusion regime in institutions, and again, the CRCC members are engaging with stakeholders in institutions and are developing an action plan to deliver on this priority. That includes those 3 pillars: fair access to research support, equitable participation, self-identification modules, make sure we have the right data. So that measures could include being more specific in our merit review criteria around research excellence not being merely citations or published peer-reviewed papers. Outreach, other forms of scholarly dissemination and excellence could be received as well. The other priority they're consulting on right now is support for early career researchers. So again, there's 3 prongs to this action plan. Fair access to research support, which one idea being bandied about there is increased feedback to improve future applications of early career researchers. Equitable participation, maybe participating in peer review committees to learn. Targeted supplements for early career researchers. So there are a few ideas that are on the table. Again, data as well, ensuring that we can report back and are tracking data on early career consistently across the council. So that's a challenge we're working on. Howard and I were talking about robotics and AI before, but I think if we could fix the delay on the slide thing, that would be a real quick fix, you know. So the fourth pillar that I mentioned quickly was this Indigenous research capacity. So the budget announced $3.8 million over 2 years to deliver on this initiative, and we're tackling this in 2 prongs. So first of all, let me back up. So the goal at the end of this would be to have a national research plan, so to speak, that would address some of the gaps in the current research landscape when it comes to Indigenous research. There's 2 prongs to deliver on the budget announcement. One, SSHRC-led consultations throughout the year, as well as these targeted connection grants. So unfortunately, I'm too late on the visit here. If you wanted to craft those, that was due last week. But they're a targeted call for Indigenous connection grants that would fund work that would lead to a position paper. These position papers would then contribute to the national dialogue that we're planning for March of 2019. So a lot going on at the federal level to respond to these priorities announced in the budget, to respond to the fundamental science review. In addition, this is more of an ongoing priority. Our open government and open science agenda has led when it comes to granting council work, has led to our open access policy, which has also led to recent changes to our support for journals that was announced a couple months ago, but also our consultation on a data management policy that's currently ongoing. So now get to the updates of our core programming. This slide, I don't want to go over each number here, but basically what I want to underline here is that the work we do involves a high volume of transactions. That's not possible without a lot of free peer review, so thank you very much for the people who have contributed in this room or your colleagues. But peer review fatigue is a real phenomena, and what we're witnessing is our refusal rate on peer reviews increasing. So I strongly urge you to go back to your faculty, to your departments, and let's work together to figure out ways to more systematically recognize that work as part of service. Or else this enterprise is not feasible. So there's that message, as well as the ongoing thank you for the hard work. I know it is a lot of work as an applicant, but also as a peer reviewer. So here's an overview of the core programs that we offer on an ongoing basis at SSHRC. So we support talent through our doctoral and postdoctoral scholarships, fellowships, as well as our master's scholarships, obviously. We also support research insights. We have our insight programs, insight development grants, insight grants, as well as our connection program, supporting knowledge mobilization, and partnership programs that can be directed at any of those goals. I'm going to highlight the Insight, Connection, and Partnership grant programs, but if you have any questions about the talent portion, do let me know, and if I can't answer, I'll bring that back. So I'll start with our Insight Development Grants program, and for those of you who don't know, it's the Insight Development Program is targeted for emerging scholars or established scholars who are trying to make a departure from their research track record, trying something new. So the idea there is to have a success rate that's equivalent for emerging scholars as established scholars. The Insight Development Grants program has the most recent round in 2018 was nearly 60% success rate. It's so there's a lot of good news for scholars applying to this program. And as I said, so that's emerging scholars, but also established scholars if you are breaking off on a new track record. You can see that it's also been sensitive to previous budget spikes. So budget 2016 came in, and the success rate went over 40. And then, as I said, close to 60 after this recent budget investment. So I've kind of tried to work out some forecasts as well. So even with just sustained funding, we'd be able to hopefully maintain around a 50% success rate there. So I think good news, as I said, for emerging scholars there. This for both Insight and Insight Development Grants, generally there's been, for a number of reasons, probably a decline in applications when it comes to the humanities disciplines. So what we heard was maybe, when I tried to do some digging on that, what I heard was maybe a perception that SSHRC wasn't open for business for smaller grants from humanities, not just humanities, but other faculty or that may require a smaller budget for a research project. Our Insight Grants program has a budget of up to $400,000. So there's this sense, if I want 25 to 50K to finish a book over the next few years, and I'm competing against this huge team, there could be a perception that it's an unlevel playing field. So in response to that and to other concerns, we instituted last year a kind of a two-stream approach to our Insight Grants program, which was a real success this last round. So that two-stream approach, the Stream A, we called it. We're not really creative with these names, I've got to say, So we came up with Stream A and Stream B, so that's good. That's for projects from $7,000 to $100,000, 2 to 5 years. So it still has external reviewers, same peer review committee. It's just that it'll have a separate envelope, and in order to incentivize applications there, as opposed to incentives to pad the research budget, it has a higher success rate than Stream B. And you can see the figures for the most recent round of IG. So the overall success rate for Insight Grants was around 47%, and so 51.6 for Stream A and 43.5 for Stream B. And this is what, because of the changes, the two streams, as well as changes we instituted a couple years ago, as well as a decline in applications. So you put those three together, and there's been kind of an upward trajectory for the success rate for IG. Even if we forecast for a return of historic application levels, success rates for IG should stay around 40%. So again, good news for, as we said before, for the emerging scholar community, but hopefully also for established scholars. My key message I often reiterate there is it's a buyer's market. So now would be the time, if you've got an idea, to dust it off and apply. Connection grants is kind of the opposite story. Still a fairly robust success rate. Connection grants, for those who don't know, are knowledge mobilization grants of up to $50,000 for a series of outreach events. I would say 99% of the time used for academic conferences, which is good. That's part of the idea. But I think the original idea of the program was for let's say more experimental knowledge mobilization methods as well, to try to mobilize knowledge outside of the academic sector as well. So public policy papers, what have you, are also eligible for this grant. That's just FYI. This has been seeing an increase in application volume, and as a result, the success rate's dipping a bit, but still fairly healthy. And then for our partnership programs, we fund partnership research in order to facilitate research that's undertaken with partners in other sectors and other institutions, what have you. Here's a kind of a breakdown of, at least for last year, of the bi-sector participation in those partnership grants that were awarded. The post-secondary partners are the largest in terms of magnitude and magnitude of contribution, and number of partners are the largest body there. I think our community can work better to find ways to increase these slices of the pie, how we work with industry, work with government. There's obviously, as we all know, barriers to working with those sectors that we need to address, but we're trying at the council to ensure that the barriers are not on the application front. So we're trying to streamline our partnership application forms, these types of things, so that the partners in other sectors don't even have to deal with our website, that type of thing. So another way in which we're trying to enable researchers to connect with those other sectors was again, we were really imaginative when we stole from NSERC the Engage grants that they have, and we were really imaginative with the name again. We called it Engage grants. So we started this last year, this partnership Engage program, and it's been very successful. Uptake has been consistently high. You can apply 4 times a year. You better get going if you want to hit the next deadline, which is September 15th, but then there'll be another one December 15th. So it's the partner doesn't have to commit to matching funds or anything like that. It's just a letter of support. The partner has to be a non-academic sector partner, and again, the success rate's around 50%. So the idea is to de-risk and lower the cost of that initial transaction with other sectors. The other program we have in the partnership pillar is our partnership development grants from 2 to 3 years, $75K to $200K, and this has seen steady application volumes, but a slight increase because of the new funding that we had in our probable success rate that you can see there, which brings it in the most recent round to over 50% and probably around there ongoing. And then our largest grant program, the partnership grant program, so it's for people who are working on larger, probably more established partnerships, for up to $2.5 million over 7 years. We're in the process of finalizing a program evaluation that we're doing of the partnership programs, and we're seeing that people who have had a PDG, a partnership development grant, are slightly more successful in the partnership grants. It's not a prerequisite, but it's apparently something that is helpful. think Dalhousie just had a partnership grant last year. Michael Unger, so there's not as many of those per year. So it's good when it's a big coup when an institution hauls one in. So this, what we've been hearing in the last few years was about making sure that we had kind of a scale of different points of entry in terms of the scale or the level of investment in the research. And here's how, it's not a pipeline. You don't have to start at the smallest grant and work your way up to the largest grant. But if in terms of the longitude of the duration and the scope of funding, hopefully you can find a point in there. And hopefully we can increase one of the ideas that I know Ted Hewitt, our president, and I have discussed is hopefully we can increase the participation of social sciences and humanities scholars in some of those even larger tri-council programs like the NCEs and maybe that $20 million Frontiers of Research Fund. Okay. The other change we made last year was to our eligibility of health research. So that had been a sticking point since I started about 4 years ago. It's one of the first things people would bring up. People would bring up Insight grant success rate, which hopefully is not a problem anymore, which was 20% at the time. And then the other thing would be, my application is declared ineligible because I used the word health, So that was the result. There's kind of a long story there, but the reason that it was originally declared ineligible was a result of a program review exercise in the federal government to avoid mandate overlap. So it had a very rational public administration reason for it. But in terms of its implementation and the way we encourage research across disciplines and sectors, it made absolutely no sense. And there was a lot of gaming of the system and people trying to find their way. So we did what we can last year to broaden that eligibility. If you do have questions, the manager responsible for Insight grants, Francois Simal, his contact information is there, has graciously offered to review summaries of proposals before you apply to let you know whether or not it would make the revised screening. But so far we've noticed that it's there's been almost no mandate eligibility issues in terms of its application last year. That and the new Tri-Council Fund will hopefully help. So as I mentioned, I'll go quickly through a few targeted calls that we have on the horizon. Speaking of horizon, the first one is Horizon 2020. So it's the European Research Council has a large pot of money that's delivered in different frameworks, and this most recent one has called for successive rounds of calls for proposals on migration research, and a couple of those rounds are even encouraging the European teams to work with Canadian researchers. So we signed a deal with the ERC and with Immigration Refugee Canada to co-fund those researchers on Canadian teams that are successful to those European research calls. Here's a quick timeline of some of those calls coming down the pipe. So there isn't going to be a call on SSHRC's website. This is on the ERC website, and the European team will be the lead. But if you're working with a European partner who is making a call into this, do contact we have a generic partnership box, and they can let you know what you can do to receive SSHRC funding. So basically all we're asking for is some tombstone funding. If you're successful there, we'll fund you. We also have ongoing collaborative initiatives. These are great where it's ongoing. Every year, if you're applying for Insight grants or Insight development grants, or in some cases the talent programs, there'll be a box that says, are you interested in co-funding from the Department of National Defense? And who isn't, really? So then you'll be led to where they discuss the types of research they're looking for with trust in autonomous systems and these types of things. And then by checking that box, D&D executives will look at that proposal and will either co-fund or give a top-up to the successful research project. Same with our sport participation research initiative. This one's been really successful. It's an exciting model. As I said, it's a real win-win. What the co-funding does is it liberates research funding for other researchers, liberates our research funding. It also shines a light on areas where public policymakers feel that there's a research gap that they need more information on. And in the case of the sport research initiative, the researcher is invited at the once a year to this public policy conference where you've got public policy leaders talking about the issues, and the researchers are presenting in plain language the results from their findings, and it's an incredibly successful dialogue. Same with societal implications of genomics research. There we've had fewer funded projects. We haven't really gotten the uptake there. But it's a similar principle. If you're doing research that's looking at societal implications of genomics research, tick the box, could be eligible for funding from Genome Canada. The reason they wanted this partnership with us is they felt there weren't enough SSH researchers looking at this issue. And we're seeing maybe we went from 1 or 2 applications a couple of years ago to 4 or 5 last year, but still it's a real lacuna in terms of at least what we're seeing on our side. In terms of, again, an international partnership, we work with funders on both sides of the Atlantic on this transatlantic platform. There'll be a call coming out on social innovation with these, pardon me, funders. So social innovation is fairly broadly defined, and I can get you that wording if you need it, or Anna Torgerson can. But the key will be to get a partner in 2 other countries, and one of them has to be on the other side of the Atlantic. This is a really exciting one. Several months ago, the federal government announced a national housing strategy, $40 billion in housing, over $200 million of that into research on housing. So there's a number of themes there that you can see. Not all $200 million is going into this call, but about $13 million is, and it's all from that housing strategy. It's no kind of shirk money involved there. So the idea is to have a call for a partnership development grant using that basic platform as a phase 1, and then the winners of that round will be invited into a partnership grant type model. Again, what CMHC would like to develop is a collaborative housing research network. So there'd be these themes as well as a knowledge mobilization hub that would be ultimately funded. So that's an exciting prospect as well. Finally, my tax, I think we're trying to figure out ways that we can, again, streamline the process between applying for our funding, getting the research grant, and then making that fast-tracked so that you can get interns in with my tax. So they, not in this most recent budget, but the budget before that, they were the big winners and received over a couple $100 million to fund interns and to try to go from around 4,000 a year to 10,000 per year by 2020. And they have an internal goal of increasing their participation of SSH interns to 20%. So that's going to be, and there's a lot of hurdles for us to get those interns in place, but it's win-win for us as researchers, for the students, for the communities that they're working in, So do take that opportunity, and hopefully the process is streamlined after getting our grant with the new forms. So I won't go into, I can't go into advice on how to apply if there's a particular form or advice on a particular funding opportunity, but the managers and the program officers are great points of contact. We have our program officer information, real people, not generic inboxes, in on the website. We also have webinars throughout the year for each funding opportunity where they go through step by step everything you need to put in that form. And of course, your research grant office is always the first place to go, and please do use them. I didn't check with Christine before I said that, but please do contact Christine. And then I have some contact information that will come up in about 30 minutes. There it is. So there's time for questions, comments.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have two questions. One is about the MedTax. Because the MedTax, why there is a low rate for the SHRC, so social science applicants, is because it requires a partner to contribute half. And for social science scholars, we work with NGO, we work with governments, and the governments are not qualified to be a partners. So in that case, it's very difficult to establish a collaboration with the NGO who would like to contribute to half of this kind of salary for a postdoc. That is very difficult. That is my personal experiences. And second one is about the postdoctoral fellows application for the InSight program. And I noticed these postdoctoral fellows could apply as the applicant, PI. But there is a condition to establish a kind of affiliation relationship with one faculty or one university. May I ask, is that to be a kind of formal tenure track, or just is that the university would like to host this research grant would be okay?
Okay, thank you for those questions. Well, the first really a comment, and I absolutely agree. In terms of the barrier to MyTax participation being the nature of our partnerships, and I absolutely agree. I've had a number of meetings with MyTax executives on this, and they recognize it as well. I think they're looking at ways, it was recently that they added the not-for-profit, the ability for us to partner with not-for-profits. So that's opening a door. There's barriers, as you said, to their financial ability to contribute, granted. But there's a willingness on their side, and they're looking at ways to reduce those barriers as much as they can. The government partnership one is that's going to be difficult to get around. I think we need to be creative try to be creative in the ways in which we can figure out ways that work financially with our partners in the not-for-profit sector. I know that's enigmatic and not helpful, but I think the opportunity is there, and MyTax is doing what they can. We need to do what we can. So, but point well taken. On the PDF issue, I'm going to have to take that question back, and I'll get someone to respond to you, because I know for IDG, you don't even need to have an affiliation, as far as I know. For Insight grants, I'm not sure. And what level of affiliation with the institution, I'll check on you. So if you don't mind, if you could come and give me your contact information afterwards, that would be great, and I'll get someone to get back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a very useful overview. I had two questions. One was related to your slide where you first mentioned Insight. And the third row of that slide was institutional support.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that means? That's my first question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I forgot to mention what that was. So we have something called the SSHRC Institutional Grant, which I want to make sure researchers know about. So that so what happens is basically it's all institutions get kind of a formula-based fund. It's not huge, but it's a small fund to support what I would call micro-level research expenses, so that we're not flooded with research applications at the below $7,000 threshold. Makes a lot more sense for institutions to handle those in various ways. So some institutions dole it out to each faculty. Some have central competitions for seed funding. So what we did last year was we overhauled that based on an evaluation that a program evaluation that one of the findings was nobody knew about it. So it was getting lost somewhere in the faculties, or it was being called different things. So there was a federal recognition of funding issues. So we have to brand those. So now they're being branded as SSHRC exchange grants, if it's what used to be called travel grants, which don't sound good. SSHRC exchange grants or SSHRC. Thank you very much. So. So that's the institutional funding. Does that answer your question?
That's great. Second question had to do with the, I think, new initiative that's Tri-Council and that's interdisciplinary. I'm particularly interested in whether that is a program that exists or whether that's futuristic.
That's futuristic, but imminently futuristic. So that program was announced in Budget 2018, whenever that was. It's all a blur to me now. And currently that committee, the presidents of the councils, are going across the country to get feedback on concerns. And as I said, they were here, and some of the leaders here at Dalhousie voiced what they'd like to see, and the same is going on across the country. These are kind of the skeleton of proposals that is out on the table, i.e. maybe we have two streams, one for smaller grants, one for larger. There maybe have targeted calls, risky peer review so that we make sure, innovative peer review so that we make sure riskier research is funded, encouraging international partnerships, these types of issues that were raised through that fundamental science review. So the timelines are ostensibly there'd be a call sometime in 2008. So it would be late, I would imagine, late fall into December if we were to keep to that timeline. But funding's got to get out of the door before the end of 2018-19, so by March 2019. So that's the timeline that we would see that happening.
The reason I asked is because there's a large number of, I'll say, research areas, and your slide where you highlighted the autonomous technology raises a couple where you could imagine teams of researchers approaching a particular question from a kind of NSHRC or SSHRC or SSHRC dimension, and it would be somewhat wasteful of resources to have all of those efforts be in separate grants.
Exactly.
When it's really one project that's about multi-ways of looking at it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think that's a dynamite point. Increasingly, there's a lot of these areas where there's a convergence of the sciences around a challenge, and this program, although the timelines I gave you might be rushed for, you might not think it feasible for yourself and a team to get together for, let's say, a fall call, but this is an ongoing program. This will be going, there's ongoing funding for this. So if not this year, next year. So
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi.
Hi, thank you for that overview. It was very helpful. I have a couple of questions about the partnership grant. So my first question is, you were talking about, sort of the fine line between eligible health research and not ineligible health research. So our team is one of those types of teams where we're right on that edge of social science and health. If you've made it through stage one, does that indicate that it's already been determined that it's not, an issue, that there's some aspect of health, or do we still have to be very careful in stage two to present this very much as social science and not overlapping with health? In other words, has that vetting already happened at stage 1, or can it happen again? Like we could be excluded at stage 2 for being too health focused.
It's possible. I haven't seen it happen, but it's possible. Let's say if someone radically changed between stage 1 and stage 2, that could happen. What I will say is, it has to be very, very blatant before I sign off on an ineligibility right now. It just doesn't make sense in the context of where we're going. Like, I'll just say that off the record, even though it's being taped. But I don't know if that makes sense. But in the context of the research coordinating committee, the context of the government priority to support collaboration between the faculties, and it has to be a very blatant kind of mandate creep onto CIHR territory for us to say no. That being said, I don't want to say that it could never happen that someone in stage 1 all of a sudden switched gears and said, "Oh, I'm just going to bring in a whole bunch of clinicians and we'll go a different direction." But I would see it as very highly unlikely. Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, and my second question is, you just made a comment that people with partnership grants, like the success rates have been slightly better for people that started out with a partnership development
Right.
grant. So we're not in that camp. We didn't go for that first. Could you say anything about why you think that's true and what we might be able to do to sort of mitigate the fact that we didn't have that sort of development opportunity first?
My conjecture would be it's that people who have had a partnership development grant have worked to establish the partnership and it has grown. So my point there would be that although that's obviously something that can contribute to facilitating a larger partnership, it's not necessarily required. Maybe someone on a different track that partnership's been established, but generally it's a competitive program, so the ones that are successful are larger, generally established partnerships or partnerships with promise that have reach across all those sectors that we were talking about, and I would imagine that people who are maybe applying, right fresh off the street without having developed those partnerships would do not quite as well as others with established partnerships, either supported by PDG or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's my
yes.
conjecture.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Thanks. Like everyone else, I do appreciate the presentation today. And what I want to do is, well, this is not really so much a question as it is a comment. It may sound like a complaint, but I hope you'll take it as a comment.
Those are very useful. Thank you.
It's a comment because I want to speak from a very personal perspective. My perspective as somebody who works in the humanities, specifically somebody who works in the literature department, and someone who is right now working on a project having to do with a 20th century American novel. And when I approach SSHRC, I look at the categories, I look at the priorities, I look at the language, and I don't recognize myself. I don't recognize where my work fits in. I don't understand how I don't see SSHRC as really being responsive to my kind of research, and which is to result in a book. But that doesn't seem to be what SSHRC is interested in right now. And so I go through the motions of filling out the forms, but I'm trying to adapt my research to the language and the categories and the universe of discourse, which in many ways is entirely foreign, and it doesn't speak to me, and I don't speak to it. And your presentation today is very interesting, but it's all about it's mainly social priorities, governmental outcomes, things that can be the government wants things that can be used in the real world. It's not interested in a book that's going to go into a library. So that's my comment. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a completely valid point. It's not the first time, and thanks again. As I said, what I find most useful is tell me what you see in terms of limitations of the programming, and that is only based on that feedback that we've made some changes, which I think have been successful over the last couple of years. Full disclosure, English literature prof myself, and I come with that angle. I was concerned about, that's why I put that slide on humanities decline in applications. It's part of the reason that we worked on that second stream. 'Cause what I heard from mostly humanities profs, but also some other disciplines, that sentiment that there didn't seem to be a home there. There didn't seem to be, whether it's the program structure or the discourse. So on the program structure, the Stream A, I think, has really, at least what I've seen on the ground, there is a home there. There's a Stream A for someone to do their book. The success rate in the literature committee last year was well over 50%. It was, so do feel free to apply. The discourse, I think you're right. I think when it comes to government priorities, it's tougher to find humanities home there, but I think that means it's up to humanists also to find where we can contribute to these government priorities. A lot of the collaborative initiatives I highlighted, also, say genomics research, it may be tougher for us to find a home, but that's not across the board. Let's say philosophers are definitely contributing to debates around ethics or AI. All that to say, I'm sensitive to what you're saying, and I don't want to dismiss it. I think it's real. I think one thing I'd like to work with our comms team on is to promote some more humanities-funded stories. I find a lot of the stuff that we promote on the website right now is more of the, let's say, socioeconomic contributions than a humanities-based project. So all that to say, point well taken, and I'm definitely going to bring that back. So.
Great. We have a queue of 4 questions, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to suggest that we take those 4. And I believe that Tim can stay a little bit longer after that. I know that the class people have a meeting right after this. So I'm going to suggest we take those 4 in the order that I pointed out, and then wrap up.
Okay.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for coming. I'm Veronica from Mount St. Vincent University. I'm the research grants coordinator there. When Ted Hewitt visited our campus, he mentioned that SSHRC was looking into having international co-applicants be eligible on Insight grants. Can you provide an update?
Do you want to take all the questions?
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea, too. I get to live my fantasy of being Oprah now. Now I can't remember the order. You were next.
Hi, Tim. Thank you. I guess the question is this. I participated on a couple Insight development juries, mainly as an artist. So in terms of artistic research, which I won't even go into, like it's a mess. It's a mess. But those juries are generally speaking interdisciplinary juries that have medieval studies, art history, artistic research. There might be some other disciplines involved there as well. And I guess the question is this: if there are a number of those juries, let's say there's like 5 of those juries, might it be possible to actually break apart what I actually felt was kind of like a jury that didn't work very well because there were too many disciplines involved on the jury?
Thanks.
I just have a brief comment in response to my colleague from literature. My experience is actually the exact opposite. I'm a musicologist. I work on computational musicology. And I'm seeing SSHRC really focus in on that Stream A and trying to get that big success rate out for the smaller things. And I really think that a few years ago that limit was actually 500,000 for the, right. and it's gone down. And I've sat on the SSHRC committees in Ottawa for 3 years in a row now, and what I see is people being sort of really aggressive about those bigger grants, actually. And I think if we're going to be innovative in the humanities, I think we do need to focus on those larger grants and think about tackling projects with other partners. I think this is a necessary thing, and I actually really worry that we're going back to that sort of all we can do in the humanities is just to write a book and hire a few RAs to sort of get there. So I would be really cautious to sort of let go of that broader Stream B and then what the potential is for that.
Really good.
I have two questions, but the first is about the role of social innovation for the Transatlantic Partnership, and you said it could be interpreted in a number of ways. So I was wondering if there is a humanities angle to that we could interpret it. And the second is about applications that are deemed ineligible before they go to committee, and wondering whether or not you have, I looked on the website to see if there was any data showing demographics surrounding the pulling of applications, and there are lots of lots of data about who has received and who was rejected, but not about the applications that were deemed ineligible before they went to committee.
Okay, so some tough questions there. I'll try to get through very quickly. So the first question was about IG co-applicants for Insight Grants International. So the distinction there, co-applicants are eligible to administer our funds, as opposed to, let's say, a collaborator or partner for the partnership grants. For most of our programs, except for Insight Grants, which is the biggest, it's most of our money, international team members can be a co-applicant and can administer our money. There's been, as part of a thrust to try to support international teams, people have mentioned, Tim, why don't we allow international co-applicants to that? It makes sense. My idea would be, this is our last holdout. I would like to use that as a bargaining chip to open the door in other councils. So you noticed in the ERC there, they're not funding Canadian teams, right? So if you want to go on that ERC team, we're funding them. So before we do the quid pro quo, I'd like to get the quo, or however I would finish that phrase. So I'd like to use that as a lever to open up some what I would, in my mind, I call like a free trade around research. So right now there are these kind of trade barriers between the councils. I think it should be more open, but before we open, I'd like to see them lower their tariffs. IDG committees, I'm going to take that, sorry, here? Yeah, so I'm going to take that back. Yeah, the way they structure the committees are based on the applications that come in, the number, how many you can have. So they must have thought that if we separated them, that one of them might not have had enough applications to warrant a committee. That's generally the thinking, but I'll bring that feedback back to the managers, and you know, so that they're sensitive and to that that dilemma. There are so there's when they're creating the committees, it's about applications, it's about availability of peer reviewers. It's about representation of regions, so it's a real Rubik's Cube, it's a gender, so the disciplinary expertise, and then it gets down to, are there enough applications to support, let's say, when it comes to IDG, a classics committee on its own, and often there isn't. So it's a point well taken. I will bring that back in terms of, as much as possible, can we separate the disciplines for IDG? Then what I have a note about the budget cuts. So what happened, budget cuts, especially on the bigger projects. So kind of went through a cycle there before I started at SSHRC. What I'm told is back in the old days, so to speak, the budget cuts were fairly aggressive, around 30% back in the SRG days, standard research grants. Does anyone remember those days? So that was kind of the norm, and that maintained or allowed SSHRC to maintain a 30 to 40% success rate in the quote-unquote good old days. Then after there were some changes to the programs, committees were told not to cut. So there was a period of about 3 years where success rate, because the grants were larger and no one was cutting, budgets basically doubled. They were inflated. And success rate dropped to 21%. So before all this money came in, we made some program changes, including encouraging committees to go back to cutting within reason. And we lowered the maximum, as you said. I think we're at a point now, let's try to, I totally agree with you, let's keep that balance. We put in the Stream A to make sure people have a home for, if they're continuing to do research, as you said, that maybe developing a book, what have you, in the humanities, but there should also be, and maybe we can tell the committees to be a little less aggressive on the budgets on Stream B, so that's a point well taken. But there should be a home for more expensive research as well, and I think with the most recent budget, we've got the funding to do that on a medium term. So that's a point well taken. The last question, two-parter on social innovation call and whether or not there was room for the humanities. I think there is. It says social innovation. I forget the exact wording of it, but that would lead to a better societal outcome. Are there ways in which philosophy or public humanities can contribute that? Absolutely. And there's grants we support with that they're working on. Thinking of Carla Rice at Guelph, who does this, how people are expressing themselves in a narrative way, how that's contributing to social and psychological outcomes for those communities. So absolutely, in the very broad definition of social innovation. And if you want to give me your contact information afterwards, or contact Anna Torgerson, her email is on there. You can get more information and get some tips on how to apply. Your second part was about ineligibility data. That's a good point. It's less than a fraction of a percent of the applications that are declared ineligible, and they're declared ineligible for a number of reasons. Maybe they don't have a CV attached, they missed the deadline, or there's a million different reasons. Mandate eligibility is a minor one, and we've almost eliminated that. So maybe there's one or two that were declared ineligible for mandate eligibility. The reason we don't publish data on it is because when it's declared ineligible, we don't do the data entry on it, so it's not on our system. But let me take that back and try to think as we're also in I didn't put a slide on there, we're also in the ongoing process that's been going on forever of trying to think about a better tri-council grants management system. So I think that's something to keep in mind for that project. So thank you.
Tim's very efficient. So I'd like to thank Tim. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out this morning. Thank those who are watching online, as well as thank Christine and the Office of Research team for helping organize this event. So if we could give a warm thanks to Tim, I think that would be wonderful.
Thank you.